Welcome back to the Beat the Odds of Business Wealth podcast, Trevor. We've got a bit of a trigger warning on this episode. So we got a bit of a trigger warning on this episode. I told you I forgot to warn you today. I'm going to upset you. And I think I've already upset you because I gave you a preview of what we're talking about.
Yes. And you know, it's good to be back here. And I'm so glad that people are, actually responding to some of the videos that we've made, especially the CPA scam and how Canadians are being taken advantage of in the system. Tell us what we're talking about today, Josh.
I mean, we're going to talk about OAS. So we're going to talk about old age security. And I don't think a lot of people understand how much older immigrants actually cost the system. First of all, I think most people probably don't even understand how they draw on the system at all if they never paid in, right? But it's probably going to open some eyes of like how much it costs. And whether you're for it or against it, I always tell people you should be able to answer the question, well, how much? How much, right?
How much?
That's my model, right? Because often, you hear our morning meetings when we go around, right? And people have queries and they're like, should I do this or this? And the first thing that usually I say is like, well, how much are we talking about? Right? Like, how much? What are we talking about, right? And so whether you're for it or against it, you should at least be able to know how much. And today we're going to tell people, well, how much it actually does cost, Canadians, older immigrants coming in. So,
and not only how much is the question, but where is the money coming from, right? So in a regular business or in a household, okay, great. You want to buy a car for $120,000. Great. So that's how much. Where's the money coming from? Yeah. So let's get into that.
So I break this down to you not like a government employee or someone campaigning for office. I break it down like like the CFO that I am, the fractional CFO services that we provide here. Like this is what we do, and this is how we would look at it, right? And so this you can get this from Stats Canada. So this is the estimates of components of international migration by age and gender annual. Their titles are so awesome, right? So. And these records will date back all the way to 1971, okay? And it starts to break down like by age, the immigration, okay? So by age, the immigration. And this will go year by year all the way till 23, 24. And I mean, interesting enough, a lot of our immigration numbers are up, but the level of centurions coming into Canada has gone down, by the way. We can officially report that the level of centurions has gone down. We have not had a single centurion come to Canada since 2015. So,
okay, so we're not bringing in 100-year-olds.
No more 100-year-olds.
99, okay, but 100-year-olds.
We have brought in 11 people, 95 to 99. So,
all right.
11 people according to this data. So, and I take this and I export it to Excel, okay? And we're going to make some estimates here, people. We are going to make some estimates here. Don't be scared of making some estimates sometimes. Like sometimes maybe our politicians, shouldn't hire McKinsey for $10 million to give them the exact number. Maybe they should just do some back of the napkin math to figure out, kind of what we're dealing with here. So, this will break it down.
But they donate to the campaign, Josh. So, all right. So, okay, here we go.
I want to give people an idea of how many people are coming to Canada each year that are over the age of 50. Okay, over the age of 50. You start in 1971, we had about 10,000 people, 11,000 people, 17,000 people, 16,000 people, okay? And even fast forward to about the year 2000. That's going to be kind of my reference point in this is you have numbers of about 20,000 people per year, okay? 25 years ago, we had about 20,000 people per year. You fast forward to today, and what do we have now? People coming to Canada that are over the age of 50. We have about 45,000 people a year coming over the age of 50, okay? Now, people would ask, like, well, how do you do that, okay? You can sponsor your parents or grandparents. Okay, you can sponsor primarily, like, are there economic immigrants coming from over the age of 50? For sure, there are. Is that the common age that economic immigrants come to Canada? Not really. It's not the common age.
You mean we're not bringing 50-year-olds who are going to be starting up a business or anything like that? Someone who's going to, drive the economic engine of Canada, make us better? Or you mean just people who are over 50 and, just receiving the benefit of being Canadian?
It's the primary path. And this is a large assumption in the numbers that I'm doing, because there's going to be a 55-year-old doctor who comes in, he's going to knock out $500,000 a year for the next 10 or 15 years. And that's going to happen, okay? But there's also someone who comes in at 40 and doesn't do anything too, okay? And so the assumption that we're making here, and this is, a little bit of back of the napkin math, and I'll tell you some of the assumptions. Some are comical, but,
sure.
The assumption is that most people who come over the age of 50 don't pay a lot of tax dollars.
Shocking.
They don't arrive until, I would go out on a limb and say that most of those centenarians that came in didn't pay a lot of tax dollars.
What?
Right? Most of the 100-year-olds who came in probably didn't get a job the next day too. So that's, it's an assumption, but like people, it's a safe assumption. And like I say, some people, there's analysis by paralysis. And when I work with business owners, I tell people, it's like, we got to get a number and we got to make a decision here, because any decision beats no decision, right? Mm-hmm. So how much does this cost? What is our best estimate that we can make today on this number? And that's what we're going to do on this issue. Okay. And so how do they do it? I mean, you come in, say you're a temporary foreign worker and you put in your 2 years, and then you're a PR. And then after that, you apply for your citizenship. And here you're, less than 10 years into the process. And then what do you do now? You go online, you make your application, and you sponsor your parents and grandparents. Okay? That's it. And by the way, applications are open until October 9th. So get your applications in now if you are looking for this, because it's...
And then after October 9th, it'll be October 9th next year.
That's right.
It just rolls over.
This thing isn't ending, right? This train, nothing stops this train, right? So that's what we have there. Open up to, so that's how this process happens. And so let's get some reference points on the math. Take it back to the screen here. And I'm going to bring it back to our reference year, which is the year 2000. Okay. I bring it back to our reference year 2000. Everyone was worried all the computers were going to crash. It never happened.
Y2K, baby.
We weren't worried about the social systems collapsing. We were worried about the computers not being able to accept 4 digits. So I don't think, maybe we didn't have our priorities right, but that's where it was. And so I come up with a number, 244,000 people. There was likely 244,000 people in Canada at that time, in the year 2000, that were over the age of 65, that likely, immigrated to Canada later in life and never paid $1 in tax. Okay, but there's some assumptions that we're making here. There's assumptions that we're making here. We're taking everyone over. First of all, in the first batch here, we're looking at the people 65 to 85. Okay, 65 to 85. Now, life expectancy at that time was not 85, but people really misunderstand life expectancy a lot of times because they look at the average age, the average age of death. But when do a lot of people die? Really early in life, like childbirth in the first year of life, accidental death usually happens in your youth, and then so the people who are coming in after the age of 65, they're going to be higher than average, and they come in with some medical screening too. So a lot of the really significant health conditions actually wouldn't have existed at that time. So 85, safe assumption. Probably the average age of death at that time is probably closer to 81 or something like that. But the average age of death for this cohort that we're looking at, 85, I think would be a pretty good assumption. And some of the comical assumptions that you got to make, when you're doing this sort of back of the napkin math is like, well, what happens to all the other people who came here after the age of 85? We just assume that they died as soon as they got out of the airport in this assumption, this is not going to be an exact math, right? But it's going to give you a reasonable approximation of what we're dealing with, right? Because there are hundreds of people who came after that, but, how long do they live after the age of 85, And how much does that materially affect everything, And so we have these people here that they simply came after the age of 65, Okay, so some of them don't arrive until after their 65th birthday, right? But we also have the people from the prior 5 years that they might have been 60 when they got here. Okay, they're now 65. And then the prior 5 years, the people from 55, they're now 65. All right. And the prior 5 years, the people from 50, okay, they've now been here for 15 years and they're now 65. Okay, so again, and we're just assuming that no one actually lived past the age of 85 in this assumption.
Sure.
Okay, we're also assuming. I know we're assuming that the people who are 50 years and up didn't pay any tax, but we're also assuming that everybody under the age of 50 did pay tax, which is probably an equal assumption in the other direction. Okay, that gets us to a number of 244,000 people. Okay. But what happens to life expectancy? And this is the problem with a lot of our social programs. What happens to life expectancy is it goes up over time. Everyone forgets, we talked about CPP. CPP came out in 1965 when the average age of death was 71. So, the cost of sponsoring people from 65 to 71, it seemed like a good idea at the time, but life expectancy has gone up dramatically since then. Yeah. And the arbitrary ages that we just drew in the sand one day haven't. Okay.
Well, I mean, that's the problem with, politicians making these arbitrary numbers. How did you come up with that number? How did you decide that that was the age that you were going to, get your old age security and your CPP and all that kind of stuff? Why did you decide that age?
It's like the 8-hour workday. It's
Sure.
like the, you know what I mean? It's like, someone just drew a number one day, 2 weeks a year vacation. Like, it's just like, where did these numbers come from, right? Generally, not a lot of science. Someone just picked it and never adjusted it again. Okay, 2% inflation. Yeah, sure, right? Now we get to today. Today is going to be a different animal because we have to assume 90 now. We have to assume 90. I know the average life expectancy is not 90, but these are people who came later in life, so they did not die in childbirth, they did not die from accidental death earlier, and they did not come with, for the most part, really significant pre-existing conditions because they would have been screened out of the process. So it's going to be higher than the average. The average for this cohort is going to be higher than the overall average, okay? We come up with a number. So that means we go 5 years back again in the process again, okay? So now we come up with 351,000 people. So the assumption that we have here is there are likely 351,000 people who've immigrated to Canada later in life who have never paid tax, okay? They've never paid any significant amount of tax, okay? Now, we all know if you don't pay into CPP, or maybe some people know and some people don't, if you don't pay into CPP, you don't collect, okay?
Right.
OAS, though, Old Age Security, is a different story altogether, okay? Old Age Security, you become eligible for Old Age Security after 10 years of residency. It does not matter if you've ever paid $1 in tax. You or your spouse could have never worked a day in your life. You could have arrived on your 55th birthday, and on your 65th birthday, you would qualify for OAS.
Yeah. What are some of the other supports that we've got in Canada for people who are low income and people in this particular scenario?
It would be OAS and it would be GIS. It would be the Guaranteed Income Supplement. Okay, those would be primarily the two. I mean, there are, there is, social assistance, and, aka welfare. Mm-hmm. But generally speaking, when you sponsor someone in, you're basically guaranteeing that they won't apply. And if they apply, so that's not really a draw on the system here. I think you're guaranteeing most parts for 20 years, except for Quebec. I think it's 10 or something like that. So it's mainly going to be the OAS and GIS. And even the bigger one is healthcare. And this whole thing, I've assumed, like, the number that I'm going to get to, like, it's an under projection because I've assumed that they've had no draw on the healthcare system until their 65th birthday. Zero draw on the healthcare system until their 65th birthday.
Have you been to an emergency room lately? Have you been to a hospital or to any medical clinic in Canada recently, or even in Edmonton? I guarantee you, as an experiment, if you go there, you will see that there's mostly immigrants who are taking the spots there.
I will do almost anything to avoid going to an emergency room. Do not seek me for health advice. I don't think it's a good idea, but that's just my general rule of thumb. I got my doctor. He works on the weekends, and I go see him. And if he can't work it out, well, I think we're just gonna probably take our chances. So
pull the plug.
Yeah.
All right.
351,000. That's our estimate that we're going with. Okay. So now we know that they qualify for OAS and GIS. Okay. They don't qualify for 10 years in. Okay. But they continue. So you hit maximum OAS at 40 years of residency. But even if you're here for 10, if you're in your 55th birthday and then you become eligible on your 65th birthday, both because of 10 years residency and because you're 65 years of age, your residency continues to accumulate as you age, okay? So, you'll probably never, if you came here at 50, not until your 90th birthday would you get the full amount, but it's continuing to go up. So it does not start at that smaller, it does not stay at that smaller amount forever, okay? So here it is. Here's the number. What does the average senior citizen cost the Canadian public healthcare system? The number is about $22,000 a year.
Wow.
$22,000 a year. So you're talking about 351,000 people who have never paid a dollar in tax, okay, that are now costing $7.7 billion per year. They're now over the age of 65, almost certainly not working, and costing $7.7 billion per year, okay? Then we don't just want to give them free healthcare. We got to give them their monthly allowance too.
Oh, of course. Right.
So they get their OAS and GIS. So now we're estimating at about $1,000 a month. And that's going to be high for the earlier years and probably low for the later years. Okay. Because like I said, they get the smallest amount at 10 years of residency and the maximum amount at 40 years of residency. So, but it continues to accumulate as they age. So $1,000 a month. But again, the big assumption is that on the other way is that no one before the age of 50 was a non-taxpayer, let's call it.
Massive assumption. Okay.
So that's what we're dealing with there. And then the bigger assumption is that no one was a draw on the healthcare system before the age of 65.
Right.
If we make those two rose-colored glasses assumptions, we are talking about older immigrants. This webpage right here, sponsor your parents and grandparents. Okay, sponsor your parents and grandparents. Sponsoring older immigrants into the country probably costs the Canadian taxpayer $12 billion with a B. Billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions. $12 billion per year, right? And so, like I said, whether you're for it or against it, your first question should be how much, right? Now, is this an exact calculation? No, it's not an exact calculation. But it's not 1 billion, people. It is not 1 or 2 billion. It's not even close, okay? Whether this number is 10 billion or 14 billion, it's a real number, okay? This is a real number, $12 billion. So, is that worth it? Would we is it a nice idea to sponsor people's parents and grandparents? Is that a nice idea for the family unification? Sure, it's a nice idea. Feeding the whole world is a nice idea too.
Mm-hmm. Right?
But we don't have $12 billion.
No.
We don't have. We've been running deficits year after year after year since, 2000 and since the early 2000s, right?
But Josh, don't you understand that to completely take in the entire world and send $22 billion to Ukraine so they can blow each other up in Russia, and also $12 billion for grandma and grandpa to come over to Canada so they can see the Rocky Mountains and hang out in Ontario. That's more important than making sure that the youth of Canada have jobs and have employment and a future. Yeah. But we have this magical thing called a money printer. The money printer goes.
This is the point. why will the politicians not talk about it? Well, like, quite frankly, some of them are too stupid to like make these reasonable assumptions. They just think it just gets paid for by fairies and pixie dust or something.
Magic.
But some of them won't talk about it because it's really, really unpopular. It's like our last video on CPP. It's like, it's $1.1 trillion underfunded, people. Nobody wants to tell you that because it's an unelectable position.
Right.
It's the same with this. It's like, this is not popular, right? You cannot sponsor, your parents or grandparents into the country. You just sound like a jerk. You know what I mean? But like, you can't afford it too. It's like saying, I don't want to feed the hungry kids of the world. It's like, but I'm going to maybe take on one kid from Plan Canada and send that donation every year, right? Like, I'm not going to send more than my annual income to try to feed the hungry, right?
Yeah, well, the thing is, common sense isn't common. And it seems like, the politicians that we've got, and I don't call them leaders because they're not my leader. They're politicians. They're public servants. They don't seem to live in the realm of common sense. They don't do the back of the napkin math and say, hey, we can't afford this. Like, there's no way we can continue to do this. If they did, I bet you, just thinking outside the realm of possibility here, if more and more politicians and more people actually spoke up to their local MPs, MLAs, and said, hey, this is a problem. We need to fix this so that Canada can continue as a country. Maybe, just maybe, there might be some change that would happen.
You're an optimist person, Trevor.
Well,
I think someone in the comments is going to tag, this is going to go on the comments, and then it's going to go on social media, and they're going to tag a bunch of MPs, and you know what they're going to do? Most of them probably aren't even looking at it. It's too lazy. And someone's going to be looking at it, and they're going to look at it, and they're going to say, I wonder what my PR person in focus group thinks of this.
Exactly.
That's their first reaction. Not that this is a problem. It's just like, how will it be perceived on my voter count if I talk about this, right?
How will the CBC portray it? It'll be, you're racist. Everything is racist, right? This isn't racist. This is just
a spreadsheet.
Math.
It's
math,
just a spreadsheet.
guys.
I have no idea where they're from, right?
Exactly. Math isn't racist. It's just common sense. If we don't have the money to pay to bring grandma, grandpa, and uncles, cousins, sisters, aunts over to the country to be with you, that's just too bad. Tough niggies.
And so why do I tell people this? Because the social system, the agreement, it's broken, people. It's basically, we've all seen the image of the power bar plugged into itself.
Yes.
It's fiscally unsustainable. Both CPP, OAS, GIS, it's all unsustainable. This money didn't exist. These are people, 350,000 people collecting on the system. They did for the rest of their lives that never paid into the system. They never paid. It is literally the power bar plugged into itself. It has, there's no economic activity there, right?
But Josh, the point you make to us often is that the reason why they bring in so many people is so that it'll boost up our gross domestic product. So they'll have a cell phone plan, they'll have an energy bill, they'll, buy gas for their cars, they'll get, these things. And so, I mean, they're good for the GDP, Josh, aren't they?
They still add to the GDP.
I'm being a bit of a smartass, but you get where I'm coming from, right?
Yeah, I mean, they still, there's some companies that don't care about this because they're going to get their cut of that OAS and GAS that's sent to these people every month.
Yeah.
And that's how some corporations think, right? So, they won't say it either because they just need the number to go up. They don't care if your pie slice gets smaller and smaller and smaller as long as the pie gets bigger, right? And government's printing money to hand out benefits makes that pie bigger for them, right?
Right.
And so this is the point where I tell people is go ahead, tag your MP if you want, tag them, blast them. You're a good Canadian if you do it, right? But why I really do it is this is not going to get fixed. Okay, there is no retirement plan from the government. The CPP, the OAS, the GIS it's going to get paid to you in fake printed money. It's the only way that this is going to materialize because the population will not vote for a change. I know they won't vote for a change because we see how they conduct themselves financially. We see 5% of the population own Bitcoin. Like once that number gets to 51%, maybe then I would know they actually understand what's going on, right? But they don't, because they would be making financial choices in their own self-interest if they truly, at scale, if they truly understood it, right? So why I do this, why I point it out, is just to tell you that it's broken, okay? And so now you have to figure out how you create that plan for yourself, okay? It is not good enough anymore to work hard, be good at your craft, and collect a salary. You have to be good at the game of money, okay? Because you just can't save in these fake paper dollars. Like, you can't just expect these fake paper dollars to sustain you, okay? Because they're just going to print more of it to sustain this sort of, craziness, right? Yeah. They have to print more fake paper money to sustain this sort of craziness, because they know that the alternative is unelectable. It's unelectable. And, do they want to make the country a better place? Yes, probably, some of them. But more importantly, they want to keep their jobs. And they're willing to prioritize on that, right?
And you can see, like, if you look at France and you look at Greece, okay? So both France and Greece came up to an economic crisis, and the government started talking about austerity and
raising the retirement age. And they rioted,
right?
They rioted in the streets.
So this shows you how stupid people are.
Yes.
They know that their country's going off a cliff, their currency isn't worth anything, life is becoming unsustainable. But as soon as the government starts to claw back some of the social programs, they lose their minds. And that's the same thing that happens in Canada. They start saying, oh, you're going to lose your health care. You're going to lose your CPP. You're going to lose your OAS. Like, all of these things, which is probably the right choice to do, right?
Canceled.
And
canceled.
And what are they doing? Oh, no, we can't have that. Canceled. Donald Trump's the devil. How dare you? Far-right extremist.
Yeah.
Racist.
Yeah. And so this is the path. And there is a path out. There is a life route. And this is what we teach, we teach people. It's like, how do you actually create that income stream that will actually sustain you in your later years? Because this isn't going to work, people. They will pay you. They will pay you, but they'll pay you in fake printed money that'll be worth less and less and less and less. Okay.
Right. So you go to the grocery store, and when you went and the groceries cost $100, next time you go, the groceries cost $150. Next time you go, it's $200. Like, and you're still only getting paid the same amount. Slightly different amount.
Maybe your monthly amount for groceries is now $105, but they cost $150 instead of $100. Like that. Yeah. That's just the path that this is going to take.
Instead of getting steak, you're getting ground crickets.
That's right. And they're going to tell you that inflation is only 2% because the quality of the goods that you buy is going to go down and down and down. You're not going to go hungry. You're just going to buy cheaper and cheaper stuff, right? And they're going to tell you people's preferences change. Like, people's preferences didn't change. They just couldn't afford the stuff that they wanted to buy.
Bottom line is, the government lies to you to save their positions, their jobs, so they can enrich themselves, enrich their stakeholders, enrich the companies in which donate to their campaigns, and you're left holding the bag. So if that's okay with you, then continue on this process. But if you're smart, you'll find a way to get out of the matrix.
Yes.
Find a way to get out of it. So let's talk about the path. Let's end on a high note, end on some positivity, because this is turning bad.
Because you know that this amount of money printing is going to take place, it's like you also know that the asset appreciation is going to accelerate. Okay, the real inflation will accelerate, but asset appreciation will also accelerate. Okay, and so you have to understand, how the system is set up to move the money from the people who do the work to the people who borrow smartly to invest. Okay, and most people don't know how to do it. They do not know how to borrow smartly, and they don't know how to invest. And usually if they try either of them, it blows up. And so this is what we do. If you want a primer on that, we have our boot camp coming up on November 8th. You can log on to the website, business boot camp. I'm sure if you type in business boot camp anywhere in Canada, it'd be on the first page, right? $200, I'll show you how to do it. For $200, I will give you a better education than you got, a better financial education than you got in the 12 years of school, right? Hundreds of video reviews online. And we do this because, like, not everyone's a client. Not everyone's at the stage where they're ready to be a client.
Sure.
But, like, heck, we want to try to help them get there.
Yeah.
We want to help them try to get there. And then some people, they are at the stage, but they need some education because they need to understand what is the real path. And we teach people, like, this is the history of money and wealth. This is how you borrow smartly. This is the products that historically are going to outperform this craziness, right? Yeah. This is the life raft. You can get on it. It is possible, even with a median income. We teach people strategies for the average, what we call the average house poor Canadian. Yeah. Like, people think, I'm just a house poor. I'm making what else can I do? Like, there is a thing that you can do, and we teach it at the boot camp, right?
That's right.
And so we if someone wants to, tag their MP, knock yourself out. But are they going to make a change? That I doubt it. But it's kind of funny when you poke them, at least, right? But more importantly, I want to see you not depend on this craziness, right? Because it's going to be paid with fake printed money, and it's going to buy less and less for you and your family. So I need to get you on the life raft.
Right. So this is a test for everybody out there. If you've been watching, everyone's showing that the gold price is going through the roof. Now, which is true? Is gold actually going through the roof, or is the fake money being deflated at a faster and faster rate? If you've been watching this podcast for a long enough time, you should know the answer to this question.
You know the answer.
This isn't moving.
1 ounce is still 1 ounce, people.
That's right. It's not growing. It's not bigger.
Yeah. It's this thing. It is this thing that's moved, right? Yeah. It's not that. It's like the gold price is 1 ounce has been 1 ounce for 5,000 years, right? Yeah. And so thanks for tuning in, people. Hit the like and subscribe. Find your path on the life raft, because it is possible. Don't depend on this craziness.
All right. See ya.